Let's dive into academic language, as well as how it pertains to academic language in your edTPA, something you will soon learn to love. Our learning targets for today include, I can define and give examples of academic language, and I can use and define the following terms. They are language function, syntax, discourse, and language demand. Now, academic language is the oral and written language students need in order to understand, communicate, perform, think, question, talk, and learn in the content area. Academic language comprises the expressive and receptive language of the school and the professional workplace. Academic language exudes this distant, authoritative sort of persona, right? It's characterized by technical words, and it's largely succinct. More specifically, academic language expresses technical vocabulary, which we'll learn is expressed as Tier 3 or BRIC words that are used in specific subjects and general vocabulary, which we will learn to label as Tier 2 or mortar words, which are common across all academic disciplines. Academic language also expresses various genres for speaking and writing, how a writer or speaker will arrange or contextualize information, how we as readers and listeners comprehend that information in order to retain it and recall it, even a way of thinking. It also includes, as we'll take a look, our particular academic registers, as well as our ability to code switch. Language is variable and dynamic, and as it pertains to academic language, we should think about things such as the sentences. They will undoubtedly be longer and more complex. The fact that in academic language we use something called nominalization. So instead of saying justify your answer, we say provide a justification, right? Or let's describe that in a concept. Well, no, in academic language, we say one conceptualization might be, and we pack our verbs into noun or noun phrases that represent them. We increasingly use passive voice, or as I might add, passive voice is increasingly used, and long noun phrases predominate. So instead of saying informational text, we might say a text that teaches about the physical, biological, or social world. Now, there are specific ways students use academic language in order to participate in the learning task. They read, they write, they speak, they view, they listen, they demonstrate, they perform. And as well, there are specific ways they use academic language to demonstrate their disciplinary understanding. Language demands that teachers must consider when planning to support student learning of content include language function, vocabulary, discourse, and syntax, and we're going to unpack those. Now, academic language development is making the language of school, content, and classroom explicit to expand students' control over language and improve their language choices according to the purpose or function and audience for the message. As part of your edTPA, you will need to identify a key language function, that one essential learning task within your unit lesson plans that allows students to practice that identified function. You must also identify the requisite vocabulary and one additional language demand, either discourse or syntax, that is related to the language function and the learning task. You'll also need to identify and describe the instructional and/or language supports you plan to put in place or employ that address those language demands. Language supports include things such as scaffolds or representations and instructional strategies that you might provide to help learners understand and use the language they need to learn in order to operate within your discipline. Now, there's a little bit of a difference here, and let's make sure we know that, okay? Functions are what you have students do. It's represented by a verb. Demands are the tools that you will have the students use: vocabulary, syntax, and discourse. Again, language functions articulate what you plan to have the students do. This is the content and the focus of the learning task. It's represented with an action verb, such as summarize or describe or contrast. Academic language functions define the specific purposes of the student task, and they're represented, again, in the form of a verb. Take a look here. There are several samples. And listed here are some from a variety of language functions from several different disciplines. One example is the function annotate. In English language arts, this refers to actions such as adding notes or comments to a text, making connections across texts, which might include allusions, or exploring literary elements. In science, this may direct students to add brief notes to a diagram or a graph. Think of academic language demands as the tool you will use to address vocabulary, syntax, and discourse. Discourse is how the members of a discipline talk, how they write, and how they participate in knowledge construction. This includes the structures of the written and oral language. Now, syntax refers to the rules that are used to organize these words or symbols. In your edTPA, you will see that this is the way that we graphically represent them, be that a paragraph or a graph. One of the main functions of syntax is to organize language in order to convey meaning. Now, Wilhelm in 2007 declared, when we teach a subject or any topic or text within that subject, we must teach the academic vocabulary for dealing with it, not just the words, but also the linguistic processes and patterns for delving deeply into and operating upon that content. Now, vocabulary includes words, phrases, and symbols that are used within disciplines. There are three categories of vocabulary that we must address and understand. Are polysemous terms, words and phrases with subject-specific meanings that differ from meanings that are used in everyday life, and even across disciplines. We have something called general academic terms. These are words used across disciplines. And then we have our discipline-specific terms, which are specific to each discipline or content area. In regards to academic language, there are three tiers. This was first undertaken by Beck and McEwen and Omenson in 1987, but then again in the text Bringing Words to Life by Beck, McEwen, and Kukin in 2002. Tier 1 words represent common everyday terms, and these are primarily acquired through our daily conversations and our first language. Tier 2 refers to the more sophisticated and precise words that are used in conversation. Consider well-written children's literature. These are most commonly employed by mature language users. Words that define written text, but are maybe not quite as common in everyday conversations. Tier 2 represents our effort to identify highly useful, though not necessarily high-frequency words. Tier 3 now, these are our discipline-specific, our technical words. You might consider things such as peninsula, cellular respiration, the law of diminishing marginal return, irony, impressionism, or the like. The usage of such terms is generally common or rare. Now here's a look at each of the tiers of words in relation to one another. This slide also represents the Common Core State Standards, whereas Tier 2 are referred to as function words, and the edTPA, whereas Tier 2 are the mortar words, and Tier 3 known as the bricks. Terms such as rise, run, and force are present in a variety of venues and across a wide array of disciplines, therefore Tier 2. However, terms such as congress, parallelogram, or pointillism are present in a particular knowledge domain, be that social studies, math, or art, thus Tier 3. Discourse includes the structure of written and oral language, as well as how members of the discipline talk, write, and participate in knowledge construction. Discipline-specific discourse has distinctive features or ways of structuring that oral or written language. Discourse, or how we talk and write and participate, is organized differently according to the discipline. For example, history organizes information around time periods or events. Science organizes information around systems, and English generally organizes information around texts or genre types. Discourse also requires knowledge of organization of information. For example, is the text chronological, general to specific, ordinal, or hierarchical? Is there a key idea followed by supporting points? Is the student aware of how that information is actually visually presented or placed on a given page? Text structures, we know, have a distinctive way of structuring language in a text. An awareness of that structure and an ability of how authors develop those explanations and arguments and ideas are a central facet to comprehending complex texts. As we've seen, more than a single logical relationship can be present. That literary text might adopt a less straightforward method of storytelling. And the way in which this is organized becomes more elaborate and perhaps less conventional over time. To begin, discourse markers are phrases that signal that information is being presented. To continue, discourse markers are a way to organize thoughts that make ideas or text comprehensible. Next, examples include first, second, if then, therefore, as a result, next, however, while, and in conclusion. Syntax is not the same as grammar. Syntax is a set of conventions for organizing symbols, words, and phrases, sentences, graphs, tables, where grammar is a set of rules that govern language in a community. Well-developed grammatical competence can reveal that one is a proficient speaker or writer, or capable of understanding, expressing, or participating in a particular community or community decisions. See also Delpit in 1995. Syntax also refers to the way in which a sentence is worded and structured in order to create, extend, or change meaning. This includes sentence structure, word order, and the arrangement of ideas. For example, this could be an essay, a chart, a paragraph, a lab report, or an equation. Nominalization was defined by Zwiers in 2008 as that which turns verbs or adjectives into noun phrases that then become the subject or the object in a clause or phrase. Let's clarify that. Here's an example of nominalization, where verbs and phrases are converted into nouns that are wide-ranging. To clarify an idea becomes clarification. To organize a lab becomes organization. And to classify a species becomes classification. In example 1, you can see fly and adapted have been nominalized to produce the sentence, flying is not something all birds can do, but adaptations to support flight are found in most wings. Academic language is one means by which we help students become insiders. And as part of our communication, we employ different academic registers to convey meaning and connect with others. Now, examples might include teenage boy talk amongst peers, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, and listening to test directions. Registers are determined according to the audience, the topic at hand, and the purpose of the message. This necessitates what is known as code switching. Now, there are 5 language registers or styles. Each level has an appropriate use that is determined by differing situations. Teachers most commonly operate in that consultative register with their students, right? Create a topic sentence, record the results on the table, plot the ordered pairs, okay? But we will also frequently employ casual register as well with our students, such as, you got this. That's so cool. Now, you must control the use of language register in order to enjoy success in every aspect and every situation you encounter. For example, it would certainly be inappropriate to use language and vocabulary reserved for a best friend or a spouse or a boyfriend-girlfriend when speaking in the classroom. Thus, the appropriate language register depends on the audience, who, the topic, what, the purpose, why, and the location, where. Now, here's an example of formal register through the lens of Red Riding Hood. Now, here's that same classic tale, Red Riding Hood, but told rather now in a casual register. Notice the difference. Academic language is the oral and written language used for academic purposes. It's the language of your discipline, right? It's used to engage students in learning, and it includes the means by which students will develop and express their content understandings. Your edTPA requires you to consider the academic language present through the lesson in order to support student learning and language development. Now, these include function, vocabulary, syntax, discourse, language demand, and language support.